welcome to another episode of the TRC Podcast. This is episode number 21, Martinsville. My name is Jake. I am your host. With me is my friend and co-host Ryan of RJM Analytics. And back with us today for another episode is Jack, a.k.a. Jimmy Fan from our community chat, to add to the discussion. We're glad to have him back. And I guess we'll just get right into it. Now, there isn't really much that we can say about what transpired Sunday that hasn't already been said 1,001 times over, but we'll give it a shot. From my perspective, I can say I've been watching racing for basically, let's say 21 years, back to when I watched VHS tapes of old races like in 2001. And that is the first time I can say in all that period that I saw something that was truly unbelievable, that I could not comprehend or fathom. And of course, I'm talking about Ross Chastain. I mean, Christopher Bell won the race and got into the Final Four, and there were other stories as well, and we'll get to those, but we're not going to bury the lead here. You know, that was the big story, obviously. And that was, like I said, it was the most exhilarated I've probably been since Junior won the Daytona 500 in 2014, or maybe even Abu Dhabi last year, which this sort of reminded me of. You know, the term unbelievable gets thrown around in sports, like commentators or people in general. It gets tossed out like way too often, especially for somebody like me. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm about as cynical as it gets. There's nothing that really ever impresses me. I was impressed by that. That was something that, you know, again, there aren't really any superlatives that I can add that haven't already been said, but it took until really a full day afterwards, like 24 hours, for me to finally kind of process that was real, that actually happened. And, you know, it's impossible to say, you know, what is the greatest move in NASCAR history? I don't really know, but I'll just say it's now my favorite move ever, overtaking the real pass in the grass that Dale Earnhardt made at Riverside in the 80s on Jeff Bodine. And seeing as I'm kind of having trouble getting my thoughts together, I mean, I'll say more about it, plenty more about it in a bit, but I'll just turn it over to Ryan now until I can kind of get my thoughts together.
I'm not going to mince words here. That was the ballsiest, most badass thing I have ever seen in more than 15 years of racing. I mean, I have never even seen anyone attempt to do anything on that level, let alone actually pull it off. I mean, that just puts what Carl Edwards tried at Kansas that one time to absolute shame. I mean, let's be real. I mean, who even thought that it would be possible to do that? Like, I thought, you know, if you just drove it in on the wall like that, you know, it would completely total your car, probably kill the engine, and, you know, you would just not have any speed to come out of that and gain positions doing it. And the fact that he not only made up the points he needed to make, although actually it ended up being kind of irrelevant since Keselowski got disqualified, which Jack will be very happy about, but the fact that he not even made up the points that he needed to make up, but beat Hamlin right at the line, that was just the fucking icing on the cake. I mean, for all those two all year, you know, their little pissy contest, well, more one-sided than anything else. I don't think I need to say which one of them it was who was acting like a high school gossip girl all year long. And for to come down to those two and to end like that, I mean, you could not script a more karmic ending to Hamlin's season, and there's just not another driver in the field, I think, who would have had the balls to do that. I mean, Kyle Larson, I guess, would be he kind of did it last year, but it's like he was then first one to come out and say, you know, you shouldn't do that. And he shouldn't have done that. So it's like it's kind of one of those unspoken sort of rules that I guess you don't go that far into the gray area to make a pass that doesn't really. I mean, I'm obviously not going to say it doesn't take skill, but it's not part of. It's not really part of racing. And I mean, I'm personally of the opinion that if there's any sort of an advantage you can take, as long as it's not dirty and as long as it's not dangerous, or at least as long as it's not endangering other people, and the only guy Ross was endangering there was himself, by all means, do it. I mean, I think a lot of these sort of unspoken types of rules are kind of bullshit, honestly. I mean, I'm a guy who thinks in other sports, if you got a big lead, by all means, run up the score. I mean, it's the other team's fault. They should have kept the score closer in that case. Or, in basketball, you're just dribbling out the clock. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a shot there. I guess this is kind of like the sort of racing equivalent to that, except he had to do it to try to make the championship round, and no rule against it. So, I mean, props to him for even thinking that it had any sort of chance, and then just processing, the risk involved in it all, and then actually doing it, and then actually making it work. And I would love to be able to know what was going through Denny Hamlin's head when he looked over, probably right at the line, and saw Ross pass him like that. I mean, that had to be the most priceless thing ever. I mean, I would say that he would probably waste it all away drinking at night, but unfortunately, he has no cups.
Nice. Well, yeah, I knew that as elated as I was about it, I know that for you it was probably even better because we all know your feelings on Denny Hamlin. Of course, I'm not a fan either for sure, but yes, that was just the icing on the cake. But yeah, from my perspective, when I mean, obviously, I'd pretty much just given up at that point that he was not going to make it through, and I was disappointed that, after, I was hoping that, sorry, Jack, that Brad was going to get up there, and, well, before we knew, of course, about the disqualification, that he was going to get up there and win the race, and that he would be saved by that, but Brad completely just blew it. He tried to give Briscoe a bump and only ended up hurting himself. And ended up he couldn't have blown the last 10 laps anymore. That's completely different thing. But anyways, I didn't see the first part of that where they were still in the triple box on NBC because I was kind of turning away at that point, and then I turned back to see that Bell was winning and doing that.
I completely missed it too.
Yeah,
I was actually Jack and I were watching it together at his house, so.
Oh yeah.
I didn't catch it until they showed him coming off of 4, and I saw him next to Denny, and I'm like, wait a minute, wasn't he 5 cars behind?
Yeah.
I thought it was actually Blaney or someone blown a tire or something.
Yeah, I thought somebody had blown a tire, and then I saw it was Ross, and I'm like, all right, he just put himself in the wall trying to do some dumb desperation shit like he always does, and then I saw where he was running on the track, and I'm like, holy shit. He just do what I think he just did.
Yeah, and so I didn't catch it immediately, but then after I saw Bell cross the line, I saw the red streak coming out, and it took me a quarter second to recognize it was a red car, and then another half second to realize, oh, that's Ross, and I think, and maybe another half second later, I was registering that he was actually making up ground that way, and he was getting through. But then when he reached the start-finish line, I fully recognized what was happening. But then I was just hoping, I knew that it was enough points, but I was just kind of waiting for double confirmation that, yes, that was enough points, and did that really happen? And it did. And needless to say, that was, as I said, that the most exhilarated I've been since Junior won the 500, or maybe Abu Dhabi. And it was in the it was in that vein where it was such a miracle and it was so unfathomable. Like it reminded me of Abu Dhabi in that wasn't nearly as instantaneous and wasn't as implausible as this, but I got that same kind of feeling of being completely defeated to being in just ecstasy in like a half second, and that was the best one. Like, I mean, I just about tore the house down. Like, parents were telling me I need to cool it down because that was like an adrenaline rush that I haven't had in a long, long time. I'm like the biggest like Ross supporter here. He's still not my favorite driver, but he is like in my top 5. And I was, and he's really the only guy that I've got left that's in contention for anything. And so obviously I was thrilled about that, and the fact that yes, he knocked Denny out of it. And there's so many facets to it, which I as far as like the move itself, I mean, was it a bit cheap, and you could say, and yeah, but at the same time, it took a lot of courage to do that. I mean, like other people have mentioned, I mean, who knows, if he goes off there and, he hits the access fence or something like that happens, without any prior experience, you can't know exactly what's going to happen. And how much skill was really involved, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you could make an argument definitely that it was a lot more courageous than it necessarily was skillful. But either way, nobody else, certainly, at least not knowing beforehand, would have had the balls to do that, as you said. And I've talked recently some about how, as good of a season as it has been on an objective level, racing quality-wise, for, like, the guys that I like and, like, rooting interest-wise, it's been a very frustrating season for me, especially really since April, since Ross won the Talladega race. It's just about nothing has gone right. And for as bad as that has been, that 5 seconds there made all that bullshit worth it. All of that worth it. Like, I hardly even care now what happens. I hardly even care now what happens in the championship race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just saying, I'll let Jack talk in just a second.
Yeah,
the only thing I've seen probably in any sport that compares to just how absolutely just surreal that was, that, took me just that long to just kind of process what I just saw, was when the Vikings and the Saints in the NFL playoffs a couple years ago, and Stephon Diggs caught that Hail Mary Minneapolis Miracle Pass, and that was just like, even that though, that was just kind of like one of those things where it kind of all happens in slow motion. It's like, I mean, it's going to happen,
and it was plausible. Like, stuff like that has actually happened before. This was just
never
like happened.
It all just happened blank in an instant, and then let's let Jack talk now though.
I'll finish my point in a minute. I'll let him go.
For me, comparing for other sports, it would have to be, for me, thinking back like a specific player, it'd have to be that March Madness game where UVA was, they had a free throw they were shooting. They literally chucked it from like beyond half court and just hit that crazy circus shot to tie the game. And I guess that was Sweet 16 maybe, or Elite 8.
The game against Purdue.
Purdue game. It was like, looked like they were done. Yeah. There was literally nothing. There was nothing they could do at that point. And then all of a sudden there was just this last second Hail Mary that, even calling it a Hail Mary doesn't do it justice, because it's way like just crazy, more crazy than Hail Mary.
I just remember the announcer in that one being so confused that like he forgot whether or not it was actually for the win or for just to send it to overtime.
Yeah, he had to correct himself after like 5 years. Like, oh wait, it was for the tie. But watching racing, and it's been almost 15 years as well. There's few moments that I've actually just sat there in just complete and utter disbelief as to what I just saw on my TV screen happen. I'm trying to even think of, nothing as crazy as that. I guess there's been a few maybe negative ones with like Newman crashed at Daytona. But something as crazy as that, or I guess the Roval actually in 2018, but that was for a different reason. But yeah, just the sheer unlikelihood of that happening, and literally the most video game move you could possibly pull, I think, at any track, anywhere on the circuit. And not only that, but actually make it work and actually to come out on top and, go from, where was he, 12th?
It was like 10th.
10th to 5th originally, then 4th after the DQ.
4th because the guy in the 6th doesn't count. He might as well have just been in last place all day anyways. That's for a different part of the combo. But, yeah, it's definitely the craziest single piece of driving I've ever seen any driver pull any track at any time. It was unbelievable.
It's just,
I'll let you go ahead.
Such an outside-the-box type of thing to even think about doing. I mean, not even just attempt it, but I mean, if I'd been a driver, I would have never even thought that anything like that would be possible.
Yeah,
I
was doing any sort of Hail Mary bullshit, I would just probably, just kamikaze the whole turn and, see where it comes out. Like in NASCAR Thunder, I would always just drive underneath 5 cars, use one of them as a wall, and that's that. So last night I was literally on my PS3 playing NASCAR 08 just to see if it would work, and it worked in 3 and 4, and I didn't gain that much time. And then in 1 and 2, I just flipped the car over. So
I cleared the fence. I cleared the fence trying it. I went to 3 and 4. I don't know how I screwed it up. I ended up flipping literally over the fence somehow at Martinsville, which was 2007, but still, it's like I would be scared to do it because I would think, how could that happen? Like it could.
What I thought was
and on your side
would have happened if he did that was it would be like the I think Truex in a Busch race at Richmond once climbed the wall and was on his side, and then
someone did that Bristol.
Yeah, Kane did it at Bristol too.
And somebody else at Nashville, maybe.
I don't
remember.
Am I
crazy about it?
Yeah, that's what I assume would have happened if in that situation. But
I've fantasized, and naturally about that kind of thing happening before, and always wishing if one of my guys that's in contention for a win is running second or whatever, if there's some guy that I don't want winning like Harvick or whatever in first place, wishing that the guy in second would do something like that. But when you watch for so many years the reality of real racing, you realize that that's not going to happen, and you don't even think of it as being possible because I mean, yes, there's been bonsai moves before, like the Carl Edwards at Kansas and Larson last year, and even Newman just bonsaiing the corner, flat out dumping Larson just to make the Final Four in 2014.
There's another one too, I think. I forgot. I don't think it was successful though. I forgot when that was. I think it was at Martinsville.
His name rhymed with Kevin.
I thought so. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, he could have just done that, and
but all those were more plausible, traditional bonsais, I guess you could say. Edwards just drove it down the corner, tried to get underneath Jimmy, and then went into the wall and just couldn't keep up enough momentum to get going, and it was similar with a lot of the other moves like that. But I didn't even think that was possible. And with last year's car, it probably wouldn't have been. But I guess this car, the one advantage of it being stiff enough and rigid enough to be able to handle that, apparently. And I guess the turn radius at Martinsville is just right for it. And that there is a big difference in speed. It wouldn't work nearly as well at an intermediate track because you're not really gaining that much from just staying on the throttle instead of getting off. For a little bit.
That's the other thing I'm hearing. People who've been complaining about this saying, "Oh, well, now everybody's going to try it." I mean, everybody might try it, but I can't imagine that at any track besides Martinsville, people are worried somebody's going to try to do it to win the championship, but it's not going to work at Phoenix. I can tell you that much. Because guys actually run higher up on the track there, so you just be basically plowing into guys. And B, I mean, the turn's much wider. You would lose momentum. I mean, physics just don't work like that. It's miraculous enough that it works here, and I think any other track besides maybe Richmond, it just...
Yeah, I think the only other place that would possibly work was Pocono turn 3, I guess. Because, I mean, we saw Newman do it.
Pocono's way wider. Yeah, we saw Newman in,
You would have to gut it
2010 after that bad Casey Kane wreck, who was just, I mean, he was.
I think Richmond, he couldn't even pull it off.
Yeah, I think Briscoe said that he's wanted to try it, but he didn't have the courage to do it before. And I think Blaney said he'd be open to doing it in the future. But again, it's very limited the amount of tracks you'd see it at. I mean, I do wonder maybe if the next race in Martinsville, if whoever's second at the end might try it or whatever. But now that everybody kind of knows it, can maybe expect it to be coming. If maybe that kind of might deter it. And who knows? I mean, there's been talk, or supposedly, according to Steve O'Donnell, they're not really going to do anything about it, which I think they shouldn't, but there's been rumblings like they should make a rule about it or whatever, which we're not going to get into all that because enough's been made about that. But,
I mean, I do kind of think there's something to be said that, I mean, as great as this was as now, I mean, it would kind of feel less special if, like, somebody else did it and, kind of best off as just one of those one-time kind of Hail Mary things. But, I mean, yeah. I think anybody who has the stones to think about doing that, I mean, go for it. And what I'm kind of hoping for is that somebody else goes for it and it doesn't work, and then nobody else tries it again.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of a self-governing thing, like, all right, well, Ross did it, but nobody else can because
they're just not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also pure luck that he had no cars in front of him.
That's the other thing. Somebody pointed that out. It was like he had to have basically half a straightaway of empty track in front of him to not just plow into the back of somebody going into the corner.
Yeah,
and Briscoe.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to say is the only bad thing about it, I guess I could say, is that now, like, no matter what Ross Chastain does, in his career, whatever he accomplishes, whether he wins a championship or how many races he may win or whatever, this is what he's always going to be known for. And it is kind of a double-edged sword when that, and it may end up overshadowing, how good he actually is as a race car driver overall. But I'll still take it, to me, I mean, other people can disagree, and that's fine. Nothing can top this, not even a championship. Like I said, this made this difficult season for me pretty much all worth it, and I hardly even care what happens this Sunday in the championship because, again, nothing, can top this as long as there isn't any kind of real bullshit or whatever. I'm going to be watching this last race and I'm completely relaxed and enjoying it because, to me, the big battle has been won, and when it comes to that, and the other last thing I'll say is it's related to it, not the same thing, is, Ross Chastain, he does a lot of dumb things, and, overall he's not a smart racer, but I will say one thing that allowed that to happen that he was very smart about, and even Denny said it during when he was on that podcast with Danica, like the week before. He was saying it's almost impossible to like pay back Ross or wreck him because he always managed to put his car in a place where you can't get to him, you can't touch him, and where I was cringing hard when like he and Denny were battling with 20 laps to go for position because they just kept banging into each other. First Denny got into Ross, and then Ross gave Denny a hard shot, and so then Denny. He got on the outside of Ross, and he left hooked him on the straightaway, and then they banged the fenders again off of turn 4 the next lap, and I was just cringing. But 2 different times, Ross, he literally backed off and didn't let Denny get behind him. Even there was one time where Denny just completely bonsai'd the quarter, and locked the brakes up going on the outside, I think maybe trying to do it. And he never let Denny get behind him so that he could dump him, because if he had, he absolutely would have been going around, but he let him, and it almost backfired because he did end up basically giving him the spot. It almost ended up backfiring, but if it hadn't been for that, he would not have been in position to do that. So it was like a double whammy of brilliance from him to not keep himself in the race and then to do that. That was maybe the most clutch part of it, maybe more than the fence thing, which you could say is a little bit of luck. But yeah, I'll stop monologuing now and we'll wrap up on that.
I think everybody had to kind of learn from Truex when he lost the damn war by letting Logano get behind him and then pull that off. I think what I was going to say, though, is kind of building on something you touched on, but I've I'm kind of trying to take a break from social media right now, well, Twitter in particular, for other reasons. But I just, looking at all sort of the buzz around this the other day, and I was seeing all kinds of, urinating tree, uh, popular YouTuber, Rob Perez, who does a Worldwide Wob, popular NBA Twitter personality, Pat McAfee, all these people who are like stick and ball people tweeting about it. A bunch of like barstool people. And it was like, holy shit, this is really like a thing people are talking about with, that happened in NASCAR. That's something other than, a political controversy or a really bad wreck, something positive.
Yes, this is the first time. It had over like 100 views, I think,
press.
cumulatively on social media, video views related to it. And yes, finally, it was something positive, like not above a controversy.
When is the last time anything that happened in a NASCAR race got this sort of amount of, viral?
Probably 2016.
It would have to be. I think either that or when Dale Jr. announced his retirement, and you had all those tributes and everything. It has been that long. I think it's been since Junior and Jimmy and Jeff and
Tony,
unfortunately Danica. It's been since
Tony thing.
Tony too. That was really the last time NASCAR was relevant in terms of mainstream. I guess actually Bubba winning probably.
That
probably did some of that, but I think just in terms of something that happened in a race, whether it was a close finish or something like that. It has been a long time, and I'm really kind of hoping, this can be sort of a launching pad for, a lot of potential new fans to get into NASCAR.
Yeah, that was exactly.
I don't know how much of an impact it'll make in the long term, but it's something. And I will say, Ross definitely shot up my, my list of. I guess probably not one of my absolute favorites still, but part of me wants to root for the guy to win the championship next week now, even though my favorite guy is in there. Easily my second choice over Logano or Bell, and that was regardless, but especially now, it's like kind of if he doesn't win the championship, then was it really worth it? I think it still was, but it's like
definitely.
Yeah, what happened will be remembered more than who wins the championship.
That Minnesota playoff game that they got blown out the next game after that, and kind of made it all not really worth it. And so this would be like, it's one of those things that you remember even better if it ends up paying off. So I guess if we don't really have anything left to say about the race, then
we'll get to that. But you pretty much made the point I was going to about that, and there's a lot of people buying GameCubes on eBay today. Huh?
That was the other thing. Mad respect that Ross is a GameCube guy. I grew up religiously playing the GameCube and the Wii, and NASCAR Thunder 03. That was my life for so many years. And
NASCAR Thunder 2003 was my first video game ever.
I think it was 05 that he mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, NASCAR. That was me. NASCAR 08, doing all that, and definitely reminds me of that because it's something you could pull off in Martinsville there, and it was crazy to actually see in real life and like not double shaking. It's like, that was a video game.
What my dad would always do when I played Thunder 03 with him is he would drive straight into the wall at the end of pit road, not on purpose, but So I told him right after that, hey, he just did what you would try to do in the video games, except he made it work.
Yeah, he said he would do it at Dodge Raceway, which I never raced that track, but that was one of the fantasy ones they had in the EA games.
Yeah, that track was lit.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, anyways,
it was a crazy move.
So,
that's all I can say about it.
Yeah. Well, anyways, there was a race going on besides that yesterday, and we'll talk about it some, not as much, but
Yes.
it was definitely much better race than we had in April at Martinsville, but still not great. The tire fall off made it better, especially in the first stage when after they wore off, it was kind of very difficult to make much ground up in the first 50 or 60 laps of a run, and then at a certain point, the tires will fall off a cliff. But as I said last week, the thing that's still, I think, really hurting the racing there and holding it back is the fact that even though they changed the gear ratios, they're still basically shifting in every corner, and that just makes everyone run the same speed because everyone gets this free bailout, whenever if they go too far into a corner or lock up or whatever, and they can just save it every time. But anything would have been better than what we had in April, and so that plus the ending of the race, which even though it was kind of induced by that caution and strategy, it was very entertaining, even outside of the Chastain thing. Like we had basically 4 cars under a blanket for the win at the end, so that kind of saved it and made it an okay race. And
I thought it was a pretty good race regardless. I mean, there wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the early 2010s or late 2000s Martinsville that we were kind of spoiled by, where, it seemed like anybody could pass anywhere and you still had the beating and banging. But I thought, I guess it's just, a really low bar that the spring race set. But, I mean, even during those first 2 stages when Hamlin was dominating, I thought it was a pretty good race. And then, the end was just the whole last 25 laps. That run was, nonstop. Just obviously the points battle helped with that, but I mean the battle for the win. And I got to give credit where credit's due. Bell, after me talking shit about him, he really came through in the clutch, and I can't, I can't downplay that. Not one of the 4 best drivers all year, but he earned a spot there.
And I think looking at that too.
Also, I guess shout out is due for my guy Cole Custer. Ran top 5 all race basically until taking 2 tires at the end. Even with the really bad pass differential because of that, still ended up with a really good score. Oh yeah, he stayed out with Briscoe.
He and Briscoe stayed out.
Mm-hmm. So just had to get that in there. Gilliland also with a really nice top 15 run all race, outran his overrated teammate. So
thank you, Landon Castle. Is what I have to say about that. Thank you, Landon Castle.
You got to give him credit for. You got to give just Stuart Housecars credit for going for it. Briscoe and Custer. They knew they weren't going to win it in the pits. They weren't going to win it otherwise. So you got to try something different. And it looked like for a second there it was actually going to work. They got ahead on that restart, a couple car lengths. I thought Briscoe was going to be gone at that point, or at least far enough ahead to win the race. And then with Seth Bell coming through there, Keselowski was going to probably be the closest threat, but he obviously just, I guess, couldn't close out a race, and Bell got around him.
Let's all be very thankful that Brad didn't end up winning and then have the shitstorm of him getting DQ'd, and we would have had conspiracy theories through the roof, because if Brad would have ended up winning, Ross would not have made that move.
I guess he would have missed.
Would he? No, he would have been 2 points behind. Ross would have been 2 points behind, so he still would have made it over Hamlin, but he would have made it only because of Brad getting DQ'd, and there would have been
somebody else winning.
I mean, it would have just absolutely blown everything up.
Oh, it would have been.
I mean, people would be like, NASCAR has Chevy in their back pockets, and NASCAR hates Hamlin, NASCAR hates Gibbs, especially after Pocono and everything. So, let's all be very, very grateful that didn't happen.
Yeah, that, and thankful for Larson. Having a little love tap that also just helped open the door for everybody else, too. Because it looked like Six was getting around Custer there. And was going to get Briscoe next, and then Larson, I think he was just being a little aggressive there and
I thought
got
Brad
into him, and then
Brad just overdrove the
Brad
corner. I
shot
thought.
in there, and
Well, what happened was Brad.
It in there, I think.
What happened was Brad. He got up to Briscoe, and he tried to give him a bump in the wrong place coming out of turn 2, and he just completely lost
Shot
6 or 7 car lengths in one shot.
Larson got underneath him.
Yeah,
No,
and
Bell
then
did, I think.
and then he kept driving
No,
too
I think it
hard
was Larson at that point.
and then he kept driving too hard in every
And then
corner and
Bell-
kept locking it up
Yeah.
until finally Larson just gave him the boot, and then he kept driving too hard in every corner, even for the last 5 laps after that, and so he could not have choked that anymore, whereas Bell did it pretty much perfectly. And on that note, I mean, Bell was kind of aided by the fact that Denny kept kind of getting screwed by his pit crew. He was clearly the fastest car all day, and he kept getting put back in traffic because of that. But still, you're given the circumstances you are, and he took advantage of it. And as much as he might have annoyed us at times throughout the year, he performed when it mattered. And I don't really have a huge problem with it.
I mean, was Bell any slower than Hamlin all race? I mean, he just didn't have the track position from.
I think they just made good adjustments because I thought Bell at the beginning of the race he was top 10, I think, but he wasn't.
He was up to if we'd seen Hamlin and Bell be able to duel it out without any late race cautions,
I think Bell would have won the end.
Stuff. Yeah, I think.
I think Bell at that point. Yeah, at that point, though, I think Bell had made the better adjustments, and I think if they had been head-to-head, I think Bell would have been the faster car. I don't know if clean air, who knows how fast 11 was at that point, but I think Bell would have been the faster car, just by virtue of the adjustments, and I think I don't think he was, people could really see how good he was until he actually got up there in a position he could really, jostle out the leaders, so... I think Bell had the fastest car, to be frank.
Yeah, and for the millionth time, whether it was Bell that made it in, or even if it had been Briscoe, at this point, I'm not even really fussed about the championship 4, especially now that Ross made it in, because again, dead horse. It's not really about who's best; it's about entertainment. Blah blah blah. And I forgot what I was going to say after that. So.
No, let's just move on to talking about next week now. We have our Final Four.
Well, are we going to talk about Xfinity or?
We'll talk about that later. And Gibbs. We've got our championship. Actually, we can kind of touch on all 3 series while we're doing this. I might have to refresh myself on who made it for the other series.
Truck, I couldn't tell you.
Truck, I know, but it's Majeski, both Smiths, and who's the last one? It's not. Is it Rhodes?
Yeah. Because remember the team stuff that they did.
Oh yeah, of course, Thor Sport. Yeah. Fuck that. I guess I hope either Zane or Chandler win. Actually, Majeski's fine too. I just kind of forget about him, even though he might even be the favorite at this point. But anybody but Rhodes there. Zane's probably had the best season. I don't really think championships matter much for lower series drivers who are going to move up the Cup anyway. It's like nobody remembers whether or not William Byron or Eric Jones or
at this point
those guys won. Nobody remembers whether or not they won the Xfinity or Truck Championship.
At this point, it's really the fun in it for us is just seeing Hayden have a heart attack over it. We love you, Hayden, but it's kind of true. Yeah. So,
then Xfinity, I guess.
I can tell you who I don't want.
Yeah, we can go back to Xfinity later.
Let's go to Cup. I think we're playing.
I mean, I've been saying it all playoffs. I think Logano is kind of guy people aren't talking about enough. He's kind of the sleeper, and now I'm not even sure if you can call him the sleeper.
I think he's a favorite.
He's been my pick all along. I would like Chase to win it, and if not, then Ross. But I've been going with Logano this pretty much entire playoffs, and I think he's my pick to win the race and the championship.
Yeah, this predictions game we have, Christopher Bell has carried my team for the last couple of weeks. As I had him in the championship 4, and I was the only one, I think. That's one of only the few we had in the round of 8, let alone the championship 4. At this point in time, a team just finds a way when it matters, when their backs are against the walls, and everything's on the line. They find a way to come out on top at the end of that race. Saw it at the Roval. Saw it this week at Martinsville. They might not even be the best car, but when it comes down to it, they find the way to get to the line first and, get the win. And I think at Phoenix, which I think you look at Bell, then similar sort of tracks in terms of mile-long tracks, with Loudon, he won. I'm pretty sure he ran well at Nashville. I think he was pretty strong for most of the race. I could see that carrying over to Phoenix, and he's going to have almost as much momentum as Chastain has, even though Chastain's going to have a lot more publicity. But I think mentally, Bell's going to have just as much momentum, and I think that's going to carry into Sunday. And I think Bell is going to end up coming out on top, whether it's a dominant race or just one of those races where he kind of sneaks in late and kind of like Martinsville, kind of like the Roval, kind of like Loudon, and takes it. I think he'll find a way, though, to be first. Win the title.
I would not say this most seasons, but I think I could envision all 4 of them winning. Obviously, only one of them will, but, first off, you've got 4 drivers from 4 different organizations, which we haven't had since
2014?
Yeah, well, 2018.
2016.
Technically 2018, even though Truex was basically a Gibbs car.
2015, I guess, would be the last time.
Pretty much.
Truex was a Childress car. Would be the last
one.
Because 2016
yeah.
was a Gibbs car.
Yeah, okay.
In 2017 was the same sort of thing.
2015, then, yeah. Chase obviously is going to be very smooth and calm under pressure as always, and not going to do anything stupid. But at the same time, someone like Ross, it's like you can just expect him to be balls to the wall again, maybe literally again, and just do whatever he comes up with, and whatever he comes up with, a lot of times it works. And then Logano, obviously, as I've said, I think he's the favorite, just with how good he is at Phoenix, how good Penske seems to be at the flat tracks this year. And then Bell, it's just like you can't count him out at this point with how he comes up clutch in these big situations. So it's like any of the 4 of them could easily win this.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't had that vision of any of these drivers could win really since it was 2020. But even then, I honestly it was 2018 because the big thing.
Everybody were all very evenly.
Everybody thought about them, but I also knew it was Logano, and he would be the guy.
Yeah,
who would be able to pull it off and beat the big 3.
I had that kind of sinking feeling going into 2018. I'm like, shit, Logano's going to win this, and it's just going to be the most Logano thing ever. And
2020, I couldn't really see Brad winning. He pretty much lucked his way in the championship 4 because other guys screwed up in the round of 8. He just basically was semi-invisible in case he got a top 5 and just got in. I knew it was going to be at Phoenix. It was not like he was any sort of stud at Phoenix, so I knew he wouldn't really be likely a serious threat. I think he had to come in 3rd or something, but I know he wouldn't be a threat. But yeah, definitely could see any of these guys winning Sunday afternoon, and I guess this remains to be seen. Are we going to see a first-time champion, or is it going to be someone getting title number 2 and becoming that first driver to win? Or I guess actually the second driver to win
Busch.
2 titles in this format. Yeah, behind Kyle Busch. Logano seems like I think he'd be the guy to do it.
as much as I enjoy seeing first-time champions, there's also kind of something to be said for, like, if we have a different guy winning every year, as in any sport, it kind of becomes like it's too random, it's too easy to win a championship. It should really mean something. The cream should rise to the top. So, yeah, we'll just have to see what we get. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to, the first time in 4 years, not have to worry about losing all my Hamlin no cups memes. Although I guess it would have been funny if he'd made it and then fulfilled his
Lost again.
Buffalo Bills of NASCAR destiny, losing 4 straight.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that, I guess on that note, that we make sure one of these Championship 4 guys wins, so we can
all right,
find another certain driver who go winless this year, so we'll do that. But I guess it's another question. Are we going to see, potentially, and we've had, 7 or 8 years, we haven't had a non-Championship 4 driver win yet in Cup. Does that change this year, or is it going to be a...
No.
Yeah, I don't see it happening.
Because everybody just gets out of their way pretty much.
At this point, yeah, was it last year or the year before? It was 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it might have been maybe both years. Yeah, where literally everyone was just...
like last year was like the first time in years that it actually even seemed like it might happen, like it could happen. But
it will eventually happen. But I mean, I'm not ever going to predict that it'll happen.
It'll be on something like a late race caution. Somebody decides they want to stay out and troll their way to win.
Or somebody will just have some sort of rocket ship car like Larson at home a couple of those years, but they'll be so far ahead of everybody that they just. Anyway, let's talk about the second coming.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I got to say my part about Phoenix. Never did get to that. Which, first off, what was that? What were we just talking about? I've already forgot. What were we just talking about?
Yeah.
Prediction.
Yeah, I mean, guys not in the playoffs.
Well, I was going to say about the Championship 4. I don't ever see that, happening, but I could be wrong, but we'll see. I like personally seeing, like, the randomness of the champions every year because, first off, it doesn't really matter with this system, and I like to see parity. I can't really ever get enough of it, but, the other viewpoint's valid, too. As far as what I think is going to happen, to me, it's a total toss-up. I couldn't really even tell you what I think is going to happen. If you'd asked me 2 or 3 weeks ago, I have said Chase was a pretty strong favorite, and he still might be, but I know he's had some misfortune, in the past, and his Chase hasn't looked, no pun intended, nearly as good as it actually has been, but even so, he hasn't quite had the speed that he had earlier in the year. Like, he's been in, like, around 5th place car most of the time at a lot of these races recently, and some guys have been a little bit faster in some events, but he's still a solid pick. But really, between, whether you want to say it's a destiny thing for Ross or if it's a destiny thing for Bell or, and Logano, I don't necessarily think Logano's going to win, but he'll be, like, his usual, like, consistency bought so throughout the race, and then I could see him pulling off some strategy at the end to do the job. But one thing I can say is I don't really put any or give any credence to what happened in March because, for starters, that was when this car was really new. And second of all, this track's going to be a bit different this time because they are making, like, a slight change, like, to make it a little bit better, where they're only putting the dreaded PJ1 compound in one set of turns instead of both, and they're moving it one groove higher, so it's not exactly going to be the same racetrack either that it was. And I picked Chastain in the game just for fun, but I'm not even going to make a pick because I think it's a complete and total toss-up. This is the year where I've probably been the least. I felt pretty comfortable Chase was going to win it 2 years ago and fairly confident that Larson was going to win it last year, but this is the first year in a while where I really don't think there's a clear favorite. But yes, now let's get on to, the Xfinity event and what... Yeah.
So I wasn't able to watch that live, but, I mean, when I heard about what happened, I'm like, yeah, of course he did that. And then when I heard about how completely unapologetic he was and how he decided to pull out the Gibbs card, I'm like, yeah, of course he did that. I mean, there's two different types of things Ty Gibbs does, which is A, either act all apologetic and, promise not to do it again. And then B, just be a total and complete little twat. Somebody posted a meme of him, of Caillou, the cartoon, dressed up in his fire suit, and I'm like, yeah, that's totally fitting. He's gonna get his. Obviously, it's very clear that he's not popular in the garage or with the fans, and so yeah, throw him to the wolves next year and see how that turns out. So, I mean, I can't say I'm too sorry for Brandon Jones. I mean, hate that it happened to him, but I wouldn't want him racing for a championship. So I guess it's Gragson, Allgaier, and Barry are the other ones. Go Allgaier or Barry, I guess.
Yeah.
Preferably Allgaier, since he's had so many times. It's like kind of getting to that point where if he doesn't win this one, is he ever going to win one? But yeah, I mean, just anyone but even Gragson. I'm like, he's going to be. Who really cares about him at this point? He'll be in Cup next year, so I mean, it's not the end of the world if he wins it. He's had the best season, but it's just like Ty after all that. No, thank you. And on that note, Austin Hill, what a dipshit.
Yes.
It's kind of a joke that he's allowed to race next week, I think. I think, if NASCAR was really serious about the Bubba thing setting precedent, then he should be sitting out for that because, I mean, straight up sucker punched a guy. I mean, that's literally assault. That should be, Myatt Snyder should be pressing charges, honestly.
Yeah,
can't just go up to a guy in public and punch him in the face.
That was just disgusting. I mean, now to be fair, we don't know what Snyder said to him that set him off or whatever that might have been, but the whole point of it is that Hill caused the wreck, that caused the incident in question. So that's bad enough, and then you're going to be the one. I mean, it really just takes a real. Like sarcastic, a real man, to be like Austin Hill's the biggest guy in the field, I think, physically. And, Snyder's like, he just dwarfs over him. And so he's just going to assault him and sucker punch him out of nowhere on pit road with all his other guys surrounding him, too, so they could also waylay him at any point. And just, I try not to make declarative statements, about people. I mean, we'll criticize people on here and give them crap sometimes, just like we do with Denny and Kevin and a few other guys, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Austin Hill is common trailer trash, and that proved it and showed it for good, for good on Saturday, and I mean it. That's exactly what that was. He revealed himself to be that. I agree he shouldn't be racing this week, if we're applying the rules consistently, but, their policy these days is to pretty much just let them fight it out, and I guess they are being consistent in that. They haven't really ever suspended someone, and at least since the boys have at it era, for doing that.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a difference between that wasn't even a fight. I mean, if two guys are both in a fight, and that was.
Basically, it was sort of
like if you do that to somebody at a bar, you get arrested. If you do that to somebody at a shopping mall, you get arrested. Why should this be different? That wasn't a fight. That was just one guy deciding to assault another guy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, he should be suspended. I'm just trying to, rationalize somehow this decision. I didn't want to, be too much of a downer and, and say what I thought in the chat, a couple of days ago. But I was like, I really don't think that they're going to suspend him. Everybody else was saying that he probably would, and I didn't want to be right about that, but unfortunately I was, and it's a real shame. If his car owner was anybody other than as Bird put it, Mr. Hold My Watch, he'd probably be suspended that way. But, well, we know that's not going to happen. And, it sucks that he seems to be the guy that's getting all the breaks while guys like Sheldon Creed and Parker Kligerman are the ones that have to pick up the scraps. But whatever. Eventually he'll get his. He's never going to be anything other than a 20th place driver in Cup at best. So whatever. It sucks, but, it's how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, it reminded me sort of like almost a scaled up Bubba versus Larson on steroids. I mean, same sort of thing, except obviously what Austin Hill did was way worse than Bubba, where, one guy is just pummeling the other guy. And I was getting the beating. It just doesn't even want to be involved in the fight, Same sort of thing with, Bubba, where he was mad, all that stuff. But Larson obviously had no business being in that fight. And, it seemed like that, where it seemed like Austin Hill was just pissed about something and just basically assaulted the guy because he didn't like how he raced. So, it shouldn't be treated any differently as it would at a bar at a mall, where not only be suspension, but some sort of an arrest and, charged with battery or something. And, normally I wouldn't say that, but in this case, that's what should happen, and I think there needs to be a precedent set with that too. So these guys are just going to come out here and, decide, I'm just going to clock this guy in the face because he moved me out of the way. You know? So I think that's what should have happened. But now,
literally just like 2 weeks ago, the Golden State Warriors made Draymond Green take some time off for punching Jordan Poole. And I mean, that was much more of a fight than this was. So it's like,
also Draymond Green. So it's
Yeah,
that's surprising with him, but
the donkey got his.
Nelson Piquet Jr.
Jack, do you have anything to say about the Ty thing since you didn't address that, or?
Ty Gibbs. I guess he really thinks he's an experiment. He thinks he's the king of the world, and that he's like Dale Earnhardt already. That's all he could say. When he thinks literally comparing himself to Jesus after a race, after he deliberately wrecked the guy.
I'm sorry, only John Lennon is allowed to compare himself to Jesus.
Exactly. It's like I don't know who he thinks he is, but he hasn't proven anything in Cup yet. He's had some okay races in the 45 and the 23, but not like a race where he was legitimate contender at the end of the race. There's been none of that. But then for him to come out here and say like he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, it's ridiculous.
Well, funny you should say that because I mean, if there's anybody to compare him to, although I think he's.
I was going to say somebody else.
I think he's even more petulant, especially at that age, than Logano ever was.
Oh, Logano at his age, yeah.
I mean, in terms of his Cup results so far, I mean, I would not be surprised if it takes Ty Gibbs, 2, maybe 3 years to ever start living up to the hype, and he's going to have to really clean up the act pretty considerably. Or else, people are going to waste no time being like, nepotism, only on the team because of Grandpa. It doesn't matter what he won in Xfinity. Once he's playing with the big boys, put up or shut up. And I'm here for it personally. I mean, I'm very high on his potential still, but I've got my popcorn ready.
I guess. I mean, you look at that and you see him literally calling himself. To me, when I would only even possibly visualize there's two Cup drivers that could just possibly even ever saying something remotely similar to comparing themselves to Jesus in terms of, their presence.
And they drive the 11 and the 6 cars, don't they?
Correct. Those are the two. And, I mean, they've sort of done it in their own ways, but nothing, even then, like, it's that scale. You can't even, this being your garage sheriff.
And even Denny is pretty clearly pissed off with what he tweeted about. Yeah, I thought that was a pretty low blow. Honestly, I'm like,
that was dark. That was gallows.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But
I mean, I would take.
Yeah, it just goes to show you
Hamlin.
how little respect the garage has for him.
Yeah, I mean, I would take a Hamlin tweet takeover a Keselowski garage sheriff over something like that ever happening again, because even they didn't have the audacity to compare themselves to, like, Jesus. It's they wouldn't even do that. Like, they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, when I saw the incident,
that's the only guy I could ever see doing that.
Yeah, when I saw the incident happen, like initially, I mean, obviously I was irritated by it, but I was also like, whatever. I mean, it is Brandon Jones, and you have to expect this. And hey, I almost like it because it'll just get even more people against Ty Gibbs. And hey, I mean, that's maybe it's worth it for that. But then immediately, like he gets out of his car at the front straightaway for the interview, and he starts fanning the flames even more with that. And then he tries to literally talk like Dale Earnhardt. He pretty much gave the exact same line that he did at Bristol. And then afterwards, afterwards he made that comparison, which obviously I did not appreciate. And it just, I mean, there's not really much more new you can say, but other than that he's not going to change. That this whole thing with him earlier, where he kind of kept his nose clean for 3 or 4 months, it was all an act, and we pretty much have to accept at this point that this is who he is and it's who he's going to be. One thing I did find funny about it is, like you never hear like Steve Letarte really getting mad, and like Jeff Burton, he'll criticize guys and be hard on them, but he won't just outright go scorched earth usually. But they both, they were pissed off after that. I mean, and that you could tell right away. I mean, and Steve Letarte, he doubled down on it today, and he pretty much just said that he said that Ty Gibbs does not have the maturity to be able to race in Cup right now, that he has the skill, but he does not have the mentality to be able to do it. And, I mean, even Kyle Petty, in his usual way, he was calling him an entitled punk. And, it's clear that nobody likes the guy in the garage right now. And, to be honest, it was almost worth it just to see the reaction to it.
Yeah. I mean, even his own father basically turned on him. He literally said he was disappointed with him, and almost as bad it seemed like these other guys were, which is the other thing. Like, literally, everybody, including his own family, is turned against him. Like, he's literally like he's Aaron Rodgers or something. Where we've seen literally his entire family is against him now. And I don't know if he's even going to care. Like, I really don't.
I mean,
how much is... He's almost in his own world. That he's I don't know.
I thought... on that note, the whole fans chanting at him, "Thank you, Grandpa." I mean, that was just
that was.
I mean, consider that like Martinsville is in the same state as the football team that he coached for all that time. I mean, how many of those fans are commies fans? So I think that kind of says a lot. It's kind of like
I guess one more note.
Penny getting booed a couple of years ago. So
he got booed like hell again after this race too.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, take a look at those two. Take a look at Austin Hill and Matt Steiner. Then you can take a look at the veterans after that race with Allmendinger and Allgaier, who were beating and banging, racing hard for that last spot, and nothing but class and respect afterward. There was no fist fighting. It was a handshake and good racing. And then there's these kids that come in here, throw punches.
They're comparing themselves to Jesus. 30, isn't he? He's been around for a long time.
Yeah, he's got to be.
Not exactly a prospect.
28.
I mean, he's
28.
He is what he is
still,
at this point.
Gibbs is a teenager, but still, that doesn't excuse some of this stuff. Yeah, I mean, definitely, of all the guys, Pup, Xfinity, Truck, Gibbs definitely came away looking the worst this week by far.
Wouldn't quite say that. I mean, he didn't assault anybody, so.
Actually, I forgot about that. Yeah, but that's obviously kind of got thrown under the rug to a degree by a lot of the media because of the whole Gibbs thing, and then what happened the next day. But yeah, I think in hindsight, those two by far came away looking the worst. I mean, really in the Cup Series, no one came away from that race.
Yeah, I
no
will, for all the trash I talk about him, I will say I was pleasantly surprised by the way Hamlin reacted to that. I thought if there was anybody who was going to be, I thought if there was anybody who was going to be really lighting the flames on, that never should have been allowed, and NASCAR should penalize him and outlaw that right now and play the safety card. I thought he would be beating that charge, but he seemed to take it pretty well. I mean, we'll see next week if he tries to get in the way, which I absolutely would expect him to do. Do anything he can to make sure Ross doesn't win the championship.
I just want to say one last thing. I mean, it's just hilarious how it seems like he's destined to always lose to him in whatever battle they have. Like he had the Darlington Xfinity thing 2 years ago where he tried that slide job on him and he failed. And then this year at Gateway where Ross took him out and, he feigned payback or whatever he is and ended up just embarrassing himself. And then Atlanta where Ross spun him. And then at Pocono where he wrecked him only and won the race, only to end up finishing behind him anyways. And then now it looks for all the world like he's going to beat him, to get in the Final Four, and he's going to be the guy who's going to beat, and then that happens. It's just a meme at this point.
Yeah, Ross has pretty much been undefeated against him.
I mean, really, he hasn't lost him when it comes down to it. I mean, sure, Hamlin crossed the line first in one of them, but it doesn't count. Just like the second place finish in that race didn't count either. Just like Brax with that one race and Brad this weekend. It's all those conflicts. Chastain's come out in front in literally every single one of them, which is something, I think.
It's like Tom and Jerry almost. Like Jerry wins every single time.
Yeah. Or I think of
Sylvester the Cat and Tweety Bird.
Or it was like Michigan, Ohio State until something happened last fall. Hamlin's a perfect comparison to Ohio State, so there's that too. Yeah, but it's one of those things where somehow it's almost like a Disney movie. Is what it is, where it seems like the bad guy, the villain's going to win, and then the last second, something crazy happens and everything's right in the world.
I think that's a good place to kind of leave this off as right now. Kind of it has that feeling after this weekend. Everything's right in the NASCAR world.
And I think the coming week is going to be extremely special.
We've got a great race to look forward to this weekend. I don't really have any last thoughts. Do either of you?
Well, I wasn't going to talk about it. I'll just mention like that what Jimmy was spoken of. That another way it reminded me of Abu Dhabi last year is when the last lap was happening and what Toto Wolff, the Mercedes head guy, was like, "This is so not right, Mikey. No." Like you could just hear the villain just pleading for mercy at the end after they thought they were going to win, and that's exactly the way it was with Denny. And speaking of that, about F1, I'm not really going to go into that race because there's nothing really to talk about. It was another match.
Isn't the season over?
There's 2 more races after this. 2 more races.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's in December. That makes sense.
Brazil and Abu Dhabi. I mean, the championship's long wrapped up, but there's still technically 2 more races after this.
Oh, okay. That's what it was.
But nothing really to talk about from the race. I mean, it was just another max mauling. And Mercedes have stepped their game up recently some and gotten closer. They've actually been faster than Ferrari and have been more competitive, with Lewis finishing second to the last 2 races. But they're still not quite there yet. And nothing really to talk about. Yeah. From the event itself, because Mexico is a race that annually is just a snooze fest, and it was again this year. And nothing really more to say. Brazil, I think, is the week after this week, and then they'll finish at Abu Dhabi in the 18th. But the championship's long wrapped up, and really there's nothing to do left but do bean counting. Max did get the record for most wins in a season with the 14 alone, although he did take 20 races to do it, a little bit longer season. But so that's it for this week. thank all of you listening for your support. We need every bit we can get trying to grow this program's reach. Please like us on YouTube and Spotify. Be sure to follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @TRCPodcast1. And follow Ryan at RJM Analytics. He has lots of great things there that we don't get to cover on the show. We didn't really get to go into any. Yeah, into any.
Mentioned it earlier, but I'm kind of planning on taking a break from Twitter for a while. So.
Well, okay.
I mean, I'll be on that account infrequently. Although I might just have things posted through the podcast account for now.
Well, okay. But in any case, I follow them anyways, and there's lots of good information between that and our account. Didn't really get to go into any statistics this week because of the other focuses, but I promise there's going to be plenty of it next week. I don't know yet exactly what we're going to be doing next week or who's going to be on or what the total plan is going to be, but we're going to try to get as many people on here as we can get, as much knowledge, brain power as we can get, have as much fun as we can. It's going to be a longer show next week where we're going to talk about everything, not just the race and shooting the breeze, but the analytics and go as deep as we can. And we'll have our whole season roundup and like opinions on who was the best and the quality of the season overall. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to make it as much of a Sharknado, Race-a-Palooza, whatever you want to call it, as we can. I'm
try to have a couple of different guests on. And Adam will hopefully be back too. But yeah, get 4 or 5 of us, and that would be great.
Yep. And so yeah, don't be shy about leaving us a comment on YouTube. Just tell us what you liked and what you think we could do better. Every bit of support and engagement helps. The TRC podcast is Ryan, co-host and head analyst / statistician, and myself, Jake, co-host and producer. And thanks to Jack or Jimmy Fan for coming on with us today to take Adam's place. But until next time, thank you all for listening and for your support, and we'll see you next time.
And one cheated on his wife and likes 2 fingers up his ass.